All right, guys, Vern, welcome back. So I figured today, I'm gonna try to share with you the scariest experience I ever had when I was traveling overseas. And I've only had one that really affected me deeply, and I wanted to share it today. Okay, let's go. So my experience began when I was traveling in Turkey. Now, a lot of people had said, don't end up going to Turkey and never experiencing Cappadocia in central Turkey. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take a flight. So I believe I was in like Izmir, Selçuk area, and I needed to take a flight to the central part, which is Kayseri. So I took a flight. It was about, I want to say $60. It wasn't very much. And the flight was maybe an hour and a half to central Turkey. And then I ended up going into Kayseri and then taking a bus from Kayseri to Cappadocia, and I stayed there in Cappadocia. Now, if you've never been to Cappadocia, it is an unbelievable landscape. It's almost like being on the moon. They have these tall spires that are, I don't know if you, they almost look like volcanic spires. They call them fairy chimneys, which just are out of this world. And a lot of the old fairy chimney caves were used by the early Christians, and they were also used for burial tombs, and people lived in them. So it's just an unbelievable landscape. And so what I did is I booked through an Airbnb to stay there for about 9 days. And I stayed at an Airbnb, kind of like a homestay Airbnb. And I thought, well, this is really cool. It's like in the center of town. It was really slow. It was toward the end of the year. So it was about December. And it was really friggin' cold, and I just barely had enough clothes to stay warm. I think I had some jeans, I bought 2 hoodies, and then I had like a thin windbreaker type jacket, and that was it. That's all I had to stay warm in this place. So the first day I get to the Airbnb, there was a group there. I think they were from Sweden or somewhere in Europe, and they were only there for a night. They were gonna do the hot air balloons in the early morning hours, and you had to get up like really early, like 5 a.m. to get to the area to stage out, to get to the balloon, to get up to see the sunrise. And that was what they were going to do, and they invited me to go there. But they were pretty emphatic, like, come on, let's go. And I was tired. I needed to make some videos. I needed to produce something, and I just thought, you know what, maybe next time. I wanted to go, but not right then. So I get settled into my room, and it's on the basement floor. It's all kind of a stone masonry cave looking type thing. And it was made using, I believe, like hollow blocks. And so everything was pretty much concrete in the room. And then it had a window leading over to the office. And then there was a doorway kind of in the center of the room. And then it had a pretty big bed. And the rooms were freezing. I mean, freezing. It was probably 50 degrees in that room when I get in there, and it's so cold. And I tell the guy, I'm like, dude, you got a heater or something? So he gives me a little space heater. I set it up, and the thing's running nonstop because it can't keep up because it's so cold in that room, and it's taken forever to warm up the room. So the first night I heard the space heater, and it was just kind of going and going and going. And then I visited with the neighbors that were from Europe, and we used a hookah and just kind of hung out and kind of shot the breeze. It was a pretty laid back night, and they were getting up early, and I was just going to try to crash. The next day I decided to go down and do some video work and try to take a look at some of the landscapes and try to put my drone up and do all that really cool stuff that Cappadocia is known for. What seemed kind of odd was after the first group of people left, I was there all alone. There was nobody there except for the owner and his wife. And he seemed really pushy and kind of emphatic that he wanted me to go on some kind of a tour. And I was kind of reluctant. I don't know. If people are too pushy or too demanding about something, I tend to put my radar up and go, maybe not. Let me see how this goes. And I felt like I was there to kind of explore on my own at first. And if I needed a tour, then I would consider it. But at that time, I wasn't interested, and this guy was just driving to set me up with somebody he knew to go on a tour. And I was kind of reluctant and kind of put him off. And I said, you know, I got other places that I'm going to see right now, so I'm really not interested. And he didn't seem receptive to me saying no. It seemed like he wasn't too cool about that. So by the second night, the room started warming up, and I started spending a lot of time in there doing editing, because it was time that I had to make some videos. So I was kind of by myself, and nobody really bothered me that time. And I remember going to bed that night, and it was about 2 a.m. and I hear something really weird. I hear like, and it would like be like every few minutes, 5 minutes, every 6 minutes. And then my heater would kick in, so I wouldn't hear it. And I thought, well, that's weird. Maybe somebody's going at it or something. I thought, well, that's kind of strange. And then I'd forget about it. And then I'd doze off. And then I'd have to go to the bathroom. And then I'd wake up and I'd hear it again. I'm like, what in the heck is that? Am I hearing things? And I tried to listen to where this sound was coming from. And I couldn't tell. I couldn't place the sound. It was all concrete all the way around me, and I'm trying to like listen for this sound of where it's coming from. I've got pretty good ears. I'm a musician, so I can hear a lot of different things, and for me to hear that kind of made me on edge, and I didn't know what to make of it. So eventually I couldn't place it, and I ended up falling back asleep. But the next morning I just felt really uncomfortable, and I stayed in my room till about noon, and then I walk outside, and the owner is sitting there at a table with somebody right in the main walkway. And he's like, oh, well, this guy's a guide, and he can take you around and stuff. And he's like, I think you're going to be a famous YouTuber, well-known. And I'm thinking, that's kind of weird. This guy's kind of strange. And he's trying to push me onto this tour guide. I don't know who he is, and I'm not into a tour, and I'm just kind of wanting to do my own thing. And I tell him, well, I'm not interested. He'd kind of give this look down, like he'd look away, like he just wasn't hearing what I had to say, like kind of a little Silence of the Lambs thing. And I'm thinking, this is really weird. I don't know why this guy doesn't take no for an answer, and why he's so pushy to get me to go in a van and ride with this guy to some tour, and I'm just not into it. And normally you go places and they'll offer, and they'll say, hey, we offer this is it. But normally they're not like really pushy trying to get you into something. So I remember just kind of walking away and feeling really uneasy, like this guy was not happy that I wasn't receptive to what he had to offer. And I ended up going into town, making some videos, exploring some caves. And then I was coming back, and there was like a little mom and pop restaurant type thing on the way back, and I stop in there, and lo and behold, the owner's cooking something in there, like this is somehow part of his connection. And he says, oh, this is so-and-so, and introduces me to this guy. And so he's chatting me a little bit, wanting to know things about me. And I'm telling him a little bit, being kind of friendly. And he says he's from Egypt. And he's talking a little bit. And then I grab the food that I have, and I go back to my room, and I eat it. And then I think middle of the night, I wanted to do something, and my hand touched the doorknob. And the minute my hand touched the doorknob, I heard something on the door across the hall from me. And I opened the door, and all of a sudden the other door opens, and it's this guy from Egypt standing across the room from me. And I'm like, well, this is kind of weird. And it was almost like he was waiting for me to go out the door so he could confront me. And he says, hi, I'm the guy from Egypt, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, now this is really weird, because this guy's staying right across from me, and now am I being monitored? Am I being watched? What is up with this guy? And why is he so invested in what I'm doing? It wasn't enough that the guy had a van buddy set up that he was trying to get me in the van. Now this guy is like watching me, and it's like, this is weird. So later on that night, I remember I was going to go to town for one last thing, and I went out the door, and the minute I opened my door, this guy comes bounding around. There's another exit to his room that goes outside the building, and then he started just walking as fast as he could to the office to kind of like meet me, to confront me, to say something or whatever. And I was like, this is weird. This guy's like totally monitoring me. And I caught him the second time doing it, and I thought, this is strange. This is too uncomfortable. Why are they so interested in what I'm doing? So I kind of ignored the guy and just did my own thing. And And then I went to bed that night, and I tell you what, I woke up again and I heard it, and it sounded like a girl's voice. And I tried to focus on it and figure out where it was, and it was almost the same thing, like like somebody trying to speak through a rag or something, and then hearing this moving around. And the more I thought about it, the more I focused on it, I started getting really scared. And I'm thinking, this place is too weird. I'm the only person technically there that I know of. And is somebody being held somewhere? I don't know. And why are these people so invested in what I'm doing there, you know? And I started getting really scared. And I'm thinking, I got to get the hell out of here. And I don't know how to get out of here. And I booked this place for 9 days. Now, the other thing I did was when I got there, I needed some laundry done. And they said, oh, we do your laundry. So I gave them laundry, and they had my clothes for 2 days. And I still didn't get them back. And I'm thinking, are they going to give me my clothes back? You know, what's going on with that? And those clothes that I had bought were mostly new clothes. So I really didn't want to lose those clothes or get rid of those clothes. But they had them. And I knew they had a dryer in this building because I heard the dryer going before. And they're like, oh no, it's going to take us a while to get your clothes dry. So that night again, I went to bed, and I'm getting really petrified because now I got all this in my head. I got this guy standing across from me. I don't know who he is. I don't know what his intentions are. There's a van that shows up in front of the place. Is it the guy from Egypt? The van windows are tinted out dark. I'm like, this is really weird. I felt really uncomfortable, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to stay there. I didn't know how to get the heck out of there. And I started to kind of have a panic attack, and I was trying to sleep at 2 a.m. and I heard the noise, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't dare go out in the hall and start looking around because I don't know if these people are like watching the camera to see if I'm aware of what's going on, if there's something going on that they don't want me to know, and I'm poking around, you know, then what, right? And I'm there by myself. They don't speak really any English, very little, and it's getting really spooky now. The guy ended up at one point taking me to town with his wife, and she had the burqa on, and she said nothing to me. I mean, not even a look. She didn't look at me or anything. So their idea was to go to the market with me, and I was going to make a video. And then at one point the guy's like, oh, there's a camera over here, let's take a photo. And he's pretending like he's my friend, like we've known each other, and it just felt like I was being groomed. It was just the creepiest, weirdest thing I've ever experienced. And I just thought, man, this is too weird. This is too weird. And I remember the last night that I stayed there, I'm thinking, I booked this place, I paid for it. Once you book with Airbnb, you're locked in. You're not going to get your money back. And I just thought, I'm just worried for my safety. And I went to bed, and sure enough, I hear it again. And I thought, that's it, man. I went to bed with my pants on that night, and I thought, I'm just going to get out of here. I'm just going to grab the basic stuff I can and just bolt. So I remember I threw on my hoodie, I threw on my windbreaker, I had my jeans on, and I just grabbed my basic gimbal stuff. And at like 3 a.m., I grabbed the door handle, and as quietly as I could, I got out of there as fast as I could. And I started walking up the street, and I thought, man, I don't want these people to see me. I don't know anything about them. And so I started walking on the dark side of the street, just kind of walking along, not having any idea where I'm going to go, totally scared, totally freaked out. I don't know if I'm being followed. I don't know if the guy from Egypt woke up when I bolted out of there. No idea. So I started walking out of there, and I started walking up through the town, up into the hills, just trying to like hide in the shadows and just stay out of there till I figure out what I was going to do. And it was really, really cold. You could see your breath. It was had to be like at least 30 degrees, maybe high 20s. It was cold, and I wasn't prepared to be out there. And I'm walking around just kind of trying to figure out a plan of how I'm going to just get away from there. Now, I had my big heavy suitcase and my big camera bag there, so I had a lot of stuff still there, a lot of expensive stuff. And I'm wandering the city, trying to avoid any street dogs that might hassle me or anything else. And I remember I walked by this building and it said taxi on it. And there was like a little light on the car for the taxi light, but in the mobile home type building, there was no light on in there. And I'm thinking, well, this guy ain't working. He's not working this late. And so I kind of wandered around trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I remember I messaged my friend Bob just before I left, and I said, hey man, I said, this is what's going on. I said, I'm scared. I'm really nervous. I don't know what these people have going on. I don't know if they're a front for something else. I don't know what their intentions are. And I just need to get the hell out of here. And he started getting scared. And I said, if anything happens to me, this is the place I'm staying at. And I messaged him before I started wandering the streets. So I wandered the streets for a couple hours. And then finally I ended up making my way back towards where that taxi stand place was. And there was a light on in the building, and I tapped on the door, and the guy answered, and I said, hey man, I said, I need to get my stuff and get the heck out of here. And I tried to tell him that I had a medical emergency because I didn't want the other weirdo guy to know exactly what was going on, and I didn't know how to confront him. So in a way, I didn't know 100% that I was totally sure, but to try to find out might have been like too risky for me in that place to have done anything else on my own, looking around or poking around and not knowing anybody there and not knowing what to do if I did see something. So my thought was just get myself out of there, just get the hell out of there. So the guy woke up, we talked for about 15 minutes, and then we ended up going in his car. He took a back way there to this place. And I saw that the Egypt guy's light was on in his room, and I thought, well, this is really weird. And so I remember I just walked in there as quickly as I could, and I just grabbed my bags, threw them over my shoulder, threw a couple things in, and I just walked out of there as quickly as I could. I mean, I was in and out of there in less than 3 minutes. It was really quick, and I started walking back to the taxi thinking somebody was going to confront me or say something, you know, and nobody said nothing, and I got in the taxi and we started driving away. And it was, as we passed the guy's store, I see this van with somebody with their lights on aimed toward the road, like they're just waiting or watching to see if I come back. And that's kind of what I was thinking, that they were looking for me. And I remember that as I was looking back, and the taxis were driving by and the lights were on, and that creepy van that was parked at that place was at that guy's like store. And I was just freaked out. And so I paid this guy $50 to take me into Kayseri. And then I had already paid for a flight at the end of, I think it was like 9 days. And then I would go out of there. So I paid for another Airbnb. And I felt so liberated to be there and to be away from there. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what connections this guy had or what was going on. But I just knew that just being safe and away from there was like my number one goal. And then I flew out of there, and I ended up chatting this guy who became a little bit of a friend at one point. And he was like a traffic cop in another town in Turkey. And I told him everything that had happened. And I said, you know, is there any way you could do like a welfare check on this place? And he's like, well, you better be 100% sure that this is what's going on. And I said, you know what? I am not 100% anything, but is there any way somebody could just do a welfare check, just to check and make sure that there is nothing going on? And he kind of ignored it. He didn't do nothing. And that was the end of that. And I always felt bad. And I always felt like, what if there was somebody being held captive there? You know, what if they had like a dungeon or something down below? What if I was the next person to go? You know, I probably had some kind of a value being there, being slow in COVID times. You don't know. So I guess the bottom line is always trust your gut. If you don't feel safe, then get yourself out of that situation, because who's going to help you in some of these places? If they don't know English, they don't know what your thing is, they don't know anything, you know, and you don't know who's good or bad in a given area. You don't know. So always play it on the safe side.
Hey, Vern.